3:47 in the morning. Akron, Ohio, January 1969. The smell hits you first. Rubber and sulfur mixed with coal smoke, thick enough to taste. The B.F. Goodrich plant, number 2 on East Market Street, runs through the night. Vulcanizing presses, hissing in rhythm. Conveyor belts carrying thousands of tires toward waiting railroad cars. 1,600 men work this shift alone. Their fathers worked here. Their grandfathers helped build the place. The plant stretches across 87 acres, a city within a city, producing 25,000 tires every single day. The workers call Akron the rubber capital of the world. They say it with pride, the way men speak of things they believe will last forever. B.F. Goodrich has been here since 1870, nearly a century, the oldest rubber company in America. The company that put tires on the first automobiles, that supplied the military through 2 world wars, that invented synthetic rubber when natural supplies disappeared. If any company seemed permanent, it was Goodrich. Then the jobs started leaving, not all at once, slowly. A few hundred here, a plant closing there. Overseas production, automation, competition from cheaper manufacturers. By 1975, employment had dropped to 900. By 1982, the main plant closed completely. By 1988, B.F. Goodrich sold its tire division entirely and left Akron forever. The building still stands, parts of it anyway. Sections demolished, sections converted, sections abandoned to weather and time. The smokestacks that once defined Akron's skyline are gone. The smell is gone. The jobs are gone. An entire industry that employed 60,000 people in a single city just vanished over 2 decades. Was this inevitable economic evolution, the natural progression of global capitalism? Or did Goodrich choose to abandon the city that built it, the workers who believed the company's promises, the community that existed because of rubber? If you're fascinated by the untold stories of America's industrial empires and the cities they left behind, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me which forgotten industrial complex I should investigate next. Your support keeps these deep dives coming. Thank you for watching. Let's begin. The story of B.F. Goodrich starts not with rubber, but with real estate speculation and a doctor who thought he could make gloves. Benjamin Franklin Goodrich arrived in Akron in December 1870 with $13,600 in borrowed capital and a complete misunderstanding of what he was attempting. He was 33 years old, a physician from Ripley, New York, who had invested in a small rubber manufacturing company in Hastings-on-Hudson. That company failed. Goodrich salvaged the equipment, loaded it onto railroad cars, and went looking for a city desperate enough to want him. Akron wanted him. Population 10,000. A canal town that had missed the railroad boom and needed industry badly. The city offered Goodrich $13,600 to match his capital, built him a 3-story factory building, and exempted his property from taxes for a decade. In exchange, Goodrich promised to employ at least 30 people. That was the deal. 30 jobs for a factory building and a decade of tax exemptions. Goodrich couldn't have known what he was starting. Nobody in 1870 could have predicted that this struggling rubber goods manufacturer would help create an entire industry, that Akron would become synonymous with tires, that tens of thousands of workers would spend their lives in factories processing rubber that arrived from plantations halfway around the world. The first product wasn't tires. There were no automobiles yet. Goodrich manufactured hose, wringer rollers for washing machines, jar rings for home canning, small industrial rubber goods for a regional market. The factory employed 40 workers by 1871. They mixed raw rubber with sulfur and other chemicals, heated it to precise temperatures in a process called vulcanization that Charles Goodyear had discovered decades earlier, but never profited from. The result was rubber that wouldn't melt in summer heat or crack in winter cold. Useful rubber. Rubber that could build an industry. The company grew slowly at first. By 1880, employment had reached 150. By 1890, 800 workers. Goodrich died in 1888, just as the company bearing his name was about to explode. He never saw what was coming. None of them did. The automobile changed everything. Before cars, rubber was a modest industry producing hoses and gaskets and waterproof clothing. After cars, rubber became essential to modern civilization. Every vehicle needed tires, not just one set, but replacements every few thousand miles, because early tires wore out quickly, failed catastrophically, left drivers stranded on dirt roads far from help. B.F. Goodrich sold its first automobile tire in 1896. A pneumatic tire for the Winton Motor Carriage Company, one of the first successful American automobile manufacturers. The tire was expensive, unreliable, and absolutely necessary. Without pneumatic tires, automobiles remained slow, uncomfortable, impractical. With them, cars could travel faster, ride smoother, go farther. The tire made the automobile possible, and the automobile made Akron into something no one had planned. By 1910, 4 major tire manufacturers operated in the city: B.F. Goodrich, Goodyear, Firestone, and General Tire. Together they employed 25,000 workers. Together, they produced 80% of America's tires. The city's population exploded from 42,000 in 1900 to 208,000 in 1920. Workers arrived from Appalachia, from Europe, from the South. They came for jobs that paid $5 a day when farm work paid $2. They came for steady employment in an industry that seemed to grow without limits. The Goodrich plant expanded continuously during these years. New buildings every few years. Plant number 1 on South Main Street. Plant number 2 on East Market Street. The Akron General Tire plant absorbed in 1912. Machine shops, mixing rooms, curing departments, shipping, warehouses. By 1920, Goodrich employed 12,000 workers in Akron alone. The company operated 24 hours, 3 shifts that never stopped. You could smell the rubber across the entire city. People complained about the odor, but they cashed their paychecks and kept quiet. The work was brutal. Mixing rooms where temperatures reached 120 degrees. Workers stirring massive batches of raw rubber and chemicals with their bare hands. Breathing fumes that shortened lives nobody bothered measuring. Building tires required strength and precision. Rolling massive rubber sheets through calendars. Cutting precise patterns. Building up layers by hand. Loading tires into vulcanizing presses, heated to 300 degrees. The process hadn't changed much since Goodyear discovered vulcanization in 1839. It still required human hands and human endurance. But the pay was good. Better than farming, better than mining, better than most factory work. A tire builder in 1925 earned $3,800 annually when the national average was $1,400. With that money, you could buy a house. Goodrich financed mortgages for employees at below market rates. The company operated a company store that sold groceries on credit. There were baseball teams, bowling leagues, company picnics every summer. Goodrich presented itself as a benevolent employer, and compared to steel mills or coal mines, maybe it was. The 1920s represented the peak of American tire manufacturing dominance. Goodrich pioneered the tubeless tire in 1947, but in the 1920s, the company was inventing faster vulcanization processes, stronger rubber compounds, designs that lasted longer and failed less catastrophically. The company operated its own rubber plantations in the Philippines and Sumatra, controlling raw material supplies. It owned retail stores across America, selling tires directly to consumers. It was vertically integrated in ways that seemed unbreakably profitable. The numbers from 1929 tell the story of an empire at its height. Goodrich employed 18,500 workers in Akron. The company operated 19 factories nationwide and produced 14 million tires annually. Revenue reached $152 million. The company paid $3.2 million in dividends to shareholders while maintaining the highest wages in the rubber industry. The future seemed limitless. Every year, more automobiles. every automobile needing tires, every tire wearing out and needing replacement. The mathematics were perfect. Then, everything broke. The Depression hit Akron harder than most cities because rubber was tied directly to automobile sales. When people stopped buying cars, they stopped buying tires. When they couldn't afford new tires, they patched old ones until the fabric showed through. Goodrich production dropped 60% between 1929 and 1933. Employment fell to 7,000. Wages were cut repeatedly. Workers who'd bought houses on company mortgages lost them when they couldn't make payments. The union arrived during the worst of it. The United Rubber Workers formed in 1935 and immediately targeted Goodrich. The company had always insisted it treated workers well, that unions were unnecessary agitation by outside troublemakers. But workers remembered the wage cuts, the layoffs, the elimination of benefits, while management salaries remained untouched. In 1936, Goodrich workers executed a sit-down strike that lasted 35 days. They occupied plant number 2, refusing to leave until the company negotiated. Goodrich resisted longer than Goodyear or Firestone, but eventually signed a contract. The union won wage increases, grievance procedures, seniority rights. Management never forgave them. From 1936 forward, relations between Goodrich and its workers remained poisoned by mutual resentment. The company believed the union had extorted it during economic crisis. The workers believed the company had betrayed them first. World War II temporarily solved everything. Tires for military vehicles, gas masks, life rafts, rubber goods of every description. Goodrich operated at maximum capacity for 4 years straight. Employment reached 22,000 in Akron. The company earned $28 million in profits in 1943 alone, more than the entire decade of the 1930s. And then the war ended, and civilian production resumed, and the slow decline began. It wasn't obvious at first. The late 1940s and 1950s looked prosperous. Americans bought cars in record numbers. Tire sales increased. Goodrich introduced the tubeless tire in 1947, a genuine innovation that eliminated inner tubes and reduced blowouts. The company seemed healthy, but underneath, the foundations were eroding. The first problem was competition. European and Asian manufacturers were rebuilding with modern equipment and lower labor costs. By 1960, imported tires were cheaper than American-made. The second problem was raw materials. Synthetic rubber had been invented during World War II when Japanese forces cut off natural rubber supplies. After the war, synthetic rubber proved cheaper and more consistent than natural rubber from plantations. But synthetic rubber was petroleum-based, and petroleum prices were rising. The third problem was automation. New tire-building machines could produce in hours what skilled workers took days to complete. Each machine replaced 6 tire builders. Goodrich invested heavily in automation, but that meant fewer jobs, and fewer jobs meant union resistance, and union resistance meant strikes that shut down production for weeks. The fourth problem was strategic. Goodrich remained committed to Akron when competitors were diversifying. Firestone built plants in the South, where labor was cheaper and unions weaker. Goodyear expanded overseas. Goodrich kept pouring money into Akron facilities that were increasingly obsolete, expensive, and difficult to operate profitably. Employment started declining in the 1960s. Not catastrophically, just steadily. 18,000 workers in 1960, 14,000 in 1965, 11,000 in 1970. Each year, fewer people walking through those gates. The company blamed automation. The union blamed management. Both were right. The 1970s accelerated everything. The energy crisis drove up costs. Radial tires, invented by Michelin, became standard and required completely different manufacturing processes. Goodrich had invested in bias ply tire production. Now, all that equipment was obsolete. Foreign competition intensified. Japanese and Korean manufacturers could produce quality tires at prices American companies couldn't match. The union negotiated aggressive contracts in the early 1970s, winning wage increases that seemed reasonable when inflation was running 12% annually, but became unsustainable when the economy crashed. By 1975, Goodrich employed only 4,000 workers in Akron. The massive plant number 2 on East Market Street operated at 40% capacity. Sections of the factory sat dark and silent. The company was losing money on every tire produced in Akron. Management began speaking openly about closure. The union didn't believe them. Goodrich had been in Akron for 105 years. The company wouldn't abandon the city that built it. But the company did exactly that. In 1982, Goodrich announced the closure of plant number 2. The last 900 workers were laid off over 6 months. Equipment was dismantled and sold. Buildings were mothballed. The company maintained a small research facility in Akron, a token presence that employed 200 engineers and technicians. But the manufacturing was finished. The final chapter came in 1988. Goodrich sold its entire tire division to Michelin, the company that Benjamin Franklin Goodrich founded in 1870 to manufacture rubber goods, exited the rubber business completely. The name B.F. Goodrich remained on tires produced by Michelin, but the American company had become something else entirely. Aerospace products, specialty chemicals, industrial components, anything except tires. Akron lost 50,000 rubber industry jobs between 1970 and 1990. Goodrich, Goodyear, Firestone, and General Tire all closed most of their Akron operations. The city's population dropped from 290,000 in 1960 to 217,000 in 1990. Neighborhoods emptied, stores closed, the tax base collapsed. Everything that had been built on rubber industry wages disappeared when those wages stopped. The Goodrich plant on East Market Street stands partially demolished, partially converted to other uses. You can still see sections of the original 1870s building, red brick walls 3 feet thick, built to last forever. Other sections are gone, reduced to empty lots where weeds grow through cracked concrete. The smokestacks that once dominated the skyline were torn down in 2003. The massive mixing rooms are silent. The vulcanizing presses are gone, sold for scrap or relocated to factories overseas, where labor costs 1/10 what it cost in Akron. What remains is memory and questions. The workers who built tires at Goodrich are mostly gone now, retired or dead. Their children scattered to find work elsewhere. The skills they possessed, the knowledge of how to build tires by hand with precision and speed, that knowledge died with them or became irrelevant in an industry that's now completely automated. The questions persist. Could Goodrich have survived in Akron? Could different decisions have preserved those jobs? Could the union have negotiated more flexibility? Could management have invested more strategically? Or was this always the endpoint once global competition and automation made local manufacturing economically obsolete? Nobody can answer definitively. The company is gone from Akron. The workers have scattered. The factories are silent or demolished. What's left is this: a city that built an empire on rubber and then watched that empire leave, taking with it not just jobs, but identity, purpose, the belief that hard work and loyalty meant something permanent. Akron calls itself the rubber capital of the world, but the rubber is gone. Only the capital remains, a title that describes what was, not what is. B.F. Goodrich started in 1870 with $13,600 and 30 workers. At its peak, the company employed 22,000 people in Akron alone and helped create an industry that defined a city for a century. Then it left. Was this progress or betrayal? The answer depends on whether you owned Goodrich stock or built Goodrich tires. The shareholders made money. The workers lost everything. The city is still trying to recover 40 years later. That's the dark story of America's forgotten tire empire. Not forgotten because it wasn't important, but forgotten because remembering hurts. Because the questions it raises about loyalty and capitalism and the value of work, those questions don't have comfortable answers. The smell of rubber is gone from Akron now. The smokestacks are gone. The jobs are gone. Only the buildings remain, slowly crumbling, monuments to something that once seemed as permanent as stone. They were wrong about permanence. Everyone was. Benjamin Franklin Goodrich arrives in Akron. With failed company equipment, his background as a physician, not a manufacturer. The deal with Akron, $13,600 match, tax exemption, factory building for 30 jobs. First products, hose, jar rings, ringer rollers, not tires. Early workers and primitive vulcanization process. The small scale of operations. Goodrich's death in 1888 before the empire truly began. How the company almost failed multiple times. The role of the canal system in early distribution. Competition with other small rubber manufacturers. The slow growth that nobody recognized as the beginning of an empire. Deep dive into the science of rubber processing. Charles Goodyear's discovery and his failure to profit from it. How vulcanization works. Sulfur, heat, chemical bonds. The dangers of early mixing rooms. Worker injuries and shortened lifespans. The experimentation with different rubber compounds. Why natural rubber from Southeast Asia was necessary. The supply chains that connected Akron to plantations in Sumatra. The technical challenges of consistent quality. How Goodrich built expertise through trial and error. The small innovations that made the company competitive. Employment reaching 800 by 1890. The first Goodrich automobile tire in 1896. Why pneumatic tires made cars practical. The early failure rate. Tires lasting only hundreds of miles. How drivers carried multiple spares. The experimental nature of tire design. Competition from Goodyear and new companies entering the market. Racing as product testing. How tire companies sponsored early automobile races to prove reliability. The expansion of the Akron plant. New buildings, new workers, new processes. The beginning of mass production. The realization that automobiles would transform the industry. Statistics on early automobile adoption. The explosive growth of Akron. Population doubling, then doubling again. The arrival of Goodyear, Firestone, General Tire. Why they all chose Akron. Transportation links, skilled labor pool, proximity to Detroit. The creation of an entire ecosystem. Tool manufacturers, chemical suppliers, machine shops. Neighborhoods built around tire plants. Company towns without the official designation. The demographic transformation. Appalachian workers, European immigrants, Southern black workers. The pay scales that attracted them. $5 per day when farms paid $2. The building of churches, schools, commercial districts. How rubber money built modern Akron. A detailed walkthrough of tire manufacturing. The mixing room where raw rubber meets chemicals. Temperatures exceeding 120 degrees. The calendar rooms where rubber is rolled into sheets. The building process. Laying up plies by hand. Adding beads. Shaping the tire. The vulcanizing presses. The skill required for precision work. The physical toll. Repetitive motion injuries. Chemical exposure. Heat exhaustion. The apprenticeship system. How young workers learned from veterans. The pride in craft despite brutal conditions. The unspoken knowledge that separated good tire builders from great ones. The production statistics. Thousands of tires daily, millions annually. Goodrich at its apex. Employment reaching 18,500 in Akron. The vertical integration strategy. Plantations in the Philippines and Sumatra. Retail stores nationwide. Complete control from raw material to consumer sale. Innovation in tire design. The Silvertown cord tire, Longer-lasting compounds. Marketing strategies. The Goodrich blimp, one of the first advertising blimps in America. Company culture. Baseball teams. Bowling leagues. Company picnics. The housing assistance program. The company store. The appearance of benevolent capitalism. Worker testimonials from this era. The belief that Goodrich would last forever. The confidence that comes from uninterrupted growth. The 1929 production statistics. 14 million tires. $152 million revenue. The crash. Production dropping 60% in 4 years. Employment falling to 7,000. Wage cuts that hit workers, who'd bought homes on company mortgages. Foreclosures. Hunger. The company's response. Blame workers for demanding too much. The formation of the United Rubber Workers in 1935. The 1936 sit-down strike. 35 days of occupation in Plant Number 2. The company's resistance. The eventual settlement. How it poisoned labor relations permanently. The philosophical divide. Workers feeling betrayed by wage cuts during profitable years. Management feeling extorted during crisis. The slow recovery of the late 1930s. The lingering resentment that would define the next 4 decades. World War II as salvation. Military contracts for tires, gas masks, life rafts, all rubber products. Production at maximum capacity for 4 straight years. Employment surging to 22,000. 3 shifts, 24-hour operations. The draft taking young workers. Women filling positions. The Rosie the Riveter equivalent in tire plants. Profits exceeding $28 million in 1943. The illusion that this would continue. Post-war. Planning that assumed continued growth. The investment in new facilities in Akron. How the war masked structural problems. The moment peace arrived and civilian production resumed. The realization that nothing had actually been fixed. Goodrich invents the tubeless tire in 1947, a genuine innovation eliminating inner tubes, reducing blowouts. The engineering behind it. Initial resistance from consumers and competitors. The slow adoption. How Goodrich marketed the innovation. The investment in new equipment, but also the cost of retooling. The competitive response from other manufacturers. The beginning of automation. New tire building machines that could replace 6 skilled workers. The union's resistance to automation. The first serious discussions about moving production out of Akron. The rising costs of Akron operations versus newer southern plants. Employment beginning its long decline. $18,000 in 1960, down from the wartime peak. Michelin introduces radial tires in Europe. The technology proves superior. Longer life, better fuel economy, improved handling. American manufacturers ignore it. Goodrich has invested billions in bias-ply tire production. The equipment is specialized, expensive, not easily converted. The strategic calculation: consumers won't pay more for radial tires. The calculation proves wrong. By the late 1960s, radial tires are becoming standard. Goodrich scrambles to convert production, but the Akron facilities are too old, too inflexible. New plants would be needed. Should they be built in Akron? The company debates. The union demands they stay. Management considers leaving. Employment drops to 11,000 by 1970. The 1973 oil embargo. Petroleum prices quadrupling. Synthetic rubber is petroleum-based. Costs spike. Consumers defer tire purchases. Simultaneously, Japanese and Korean manufacturers entering the American market with quality tires at lower prices. The wage differential. Akron workers earning 12-hour. Foreign workers earning 2-hour. The union negotiates aggressive contracts in early 1970s, winning increases that match inflation. When inflation hits 12%, wages must rise 12%. But when the economy collapses, those wages become unsustainable. Goodrich losing money on every tire produced in Akron. The 1975 layoffs. employment dropping to 4,000. The company's public statements about the future. The union's disbelief. 7 years of managed decline. Plant number 2 operating at 40% capacity. Entire sections sitting dark. Equipment becoming obsolete, but not replaced. The workers who remain, knowing the end is coming, but showing up anyway. The pension calculations. If you can last 5 more years, your benefits vest. The race between closure and retirement. The quality of tires deteriorating as experienced workers leave. The customer complaints. The damage to the Goodrich brand. The company's focus shifting to aerospace and specialty chemicals. Rubber becoming a sideline. The rumors of closure. The unions. Attempts to negotiate concessions in exchange for keeping the plant open. Management's refusal to commit. The final announcement in 1982. Plant number 2 will close. The final 6 months of production. The 900 remaining workers building tires they know will be among the last. The mix of emotions. Anger, relief, grief, resignation. The pension settlements. Who qualifies, who doesn't. The workers with 29 years who missed the 30-year threshold. The legal battles over benefits. The equipment auction. Massive vulcanizing presses sold for scrap value. The dismantling of machinery. What gets relocated to other plants. What gets destroyed. The last tire rolls off the line. No ceremony. The gates close. The workers disperse. Where they go, some to other tire companies in other states, some to completely different industries, some never find steady work again. The neighborhood impact. Stores closing. Houses abandoned. The commercial district dying. The 5 years after closure. Goodrich. Maintaining a small research facility in Akron. 200 employees. The company reinventing itself around aerospace. Profits actually improving after exiting tire manufacturing. The 1988 announcement, Goodrich sells tire division to Michelin. The name B.F. Goodrich will remain on tires, but a French company will manufacture them. The reaction in Akron. Shock, anger, the sense of complete betrayal. A company founded in Akron, built by Akron workers, supported by city subsidies for over a century, now leaving entirely. The end of rubber in Akron. Goodyear, Firestone, General Tire all following similar paths. The loss of 50,000 rubber industry jobs citywide between 1970 and 1990. The population collapse, 290,000 to 217,000. The tax base destruction. The city's desperate attempts to attract new industry. The failure to replace what was lost. The Goodrich plant today. Sections demolished in the 1990s and 2000s. The smokestacks torn down in 2003. Parts converted to light industrial use. Offices, storage, parts abandoned completely. The historical markers that explain what stood here. The tours of abandoned sections for urban explorers and history enthusiasts. The remaining workers, now in their 70s and 80s, their memories of what it was like. The photographs they kept. The skills they can no longer use. The Akron that remains, a city reinventing itself around polymers, research, education. The University of Akron's Polymer Science Program, the attempt to build a new identity, but also the wounds that haven't healed. The economic statistics showing Akron never recovered. The political implications of industrial abandonment. The resentment toward global capitalism. The questions that remain unanswered. Could Goodrich have survived in Akron? Could anyone? The broader story of American deindustrialization. What the Goodrich closure represents about loyalty, work, community, capitalism. The final image. Empty buildings where thousands once worked. Silent spaces where machinery once thundered. The absence where an empire stood.